My name is EndJewHatred, and welcome to I'm That podcast, where I get to talk to some pretty incredible people. Some are friends and colleagues, some are clients, and some are people I haven't even met yet. On I'm That, we'll hear from them about who they are, what they do and why, stuff they love or hate, mistakes they've made, victories they've had. They're all known for something, but by the time we're through, the hope is they'll have revealed some things we didn't know about them. Our talk may be deep, profound, funny, who knows really. One thing for sure, it'll be interesting and honest. So if you're up for that, thank you for joining me on I'm That, and here we go. I started noticing Michelle Ahdoot online around 8 months ago. She's the Director of Programming and Strategy at EndJewHatred, a nonpartisan international grassroots civil rights movement that unites ordinary people, activists, and organizations from around the world who support the cause that defines the movement to end Jew hatred in our lifetime. Now, what struck me about Michelle was her unbridled passion and conviction every single time I saw her speaking up and galvanizing people on social media platforms who wanted to fight the good fight but were unsure how. Now, comprised of members from all paths and walks of life, EndJewHatred's mission is embedded in upholding the rights of Jews worldwide through strategic partnerships, mobilization, and activism. It's hard work, but we need that more than ever. Before joining EndJewHatred, Michelle served as a board member and advisor to Friends of the Israeli Defense Forces, helping to create and market their Women's Brigade. And for the past 8 years, she's also served as the Master of Ceremonies at their annual North Shore Gala. A fervent believer that parent-teacher-administrator partnerships lie at the core of a strong community's bedrock, Michelle served as president of Great Neck Public Schools United Parent-Teacher Council and led 8 joint committees which enhance student education and quality of life across the district's 10 schools. She holds a Bachelor of Sciences in Finance and Marketing from NYU Stern School of Business. And seriously, it's just a real honor to welcome her to the I'm That podcast. I'm a huge fan of everything she's doing. So we're going to get into it with all of what you just said, we're going to get into. And just bear in mind that maybe there are quite a few people on this podcast who don't know who you are because I have a non-Jewish audience that is seeing what I'm doing. But I'd like them to hear a little bit more about you beyond the bio that I just read out now, to really just hear more about what you're going through personally, because I think what you're doing is so important and so critical, so necessary, and not just for Jewish people. And I want to see how we can get people to understand, people who are not even aware of what we're going through, to make them aware. But before we get into all of that, there's always a question that I ask on the I'm That podcast. And it's literally for you to complete a sentence. So are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So, Michelle Ahdoot, please complete this sentence. I'm that.
I'm that Iranian Jewish female that has always wanted to break barriers and do more. I'm that mom of 4 and wife of 24 years and counting that looks ahead in the future to ensure, see the importance of ensuring that generations after me, children, grandchildren, will be in a better place than we are now. And I'm that daughter of 2 parents that fled Iran amidst persecution and terror, which also shapes my view of what can be if we stay quiet.
Wow. There's so much to unpack there. I think maybe the thing that's most interesting to me right now is the Iranian thing.
Yeah.
And just remember, a lot of people don't know what that was all about. Why did your family flee Iran? When did they flee? Who was there before? Who's there now? So you want to just maybe start there?
Yes. So my parents, my dad was born in 1935, my mom in 1942. Iranian Jews, which is a minority in Iran and was always a minority in Iran, of course. But when they were growing up, under the rule of the Shah, things were okay. Things were okay. Everybody mingled, were friends. People in a couple of individuals in my dad's family were physicians to the Shah. Some individuals in my mom's family owned a lot of real estate and very well-known hotels back in the days of when the Iranian regime is not what it is now, when women had more rights, and when what we all know now has what has transpired and what Iran has turned into. For anyone that might not know, the Iranian Revolution started rearing its ugly head and came to a real boiling point in 1979 with the overthrowing of the Shah at the time. Things by and large started on college campuses in terms of the loud voices believing that there was a better life ahead if they went the way of Ayatollah Khomeini and the mullahs. I think that there was a lot of confusion and a lot of what we term now useful idiots in terms of, people really just being taken over, and used, that just didn't know better. So with that revolution came intense persecution for Jews. Jews had to really flee crazy stories on every level, fleeing middle of the night, some not getting out in time. But my parents fled. Thankfully, they made it here to America via, different routes, being separated from their parents, even though, they were children, separated from their siblings who were 5, 6 years old, some of them, but they made it here. But knowing what true persecution looks like, and knowing the parallels that we are now seeing on college campuses here in America and in Europe, I think is where the true both fear comes into play and also that steadfast determination to fight for our civil rights and ensure that what happened there does not happen here to us.
Do you have anyone left in Iran? Do you know people in Iran?
I don't, interestingly enough, my husband, who also was born in Iran, but left when he was 7 years old. Also, he left, thankfully, pre-revolution in terms of not having to sort of, be smuggled out. But his dad's sister, he has an aunt who is still in Iran. And it's interesting. I don't talk much about it with him because I do find it fascinating that she's still there. And I think the story goes that she was just frozen in place, her and her husband, too scared to leave. But it's terrible that they stayed, and they're there. And they're sort of, I don't know if the word is living in hiding, but they're not living freely. Let's put it that way. But that's the only person that I know of that is there still.
And for those who don't know, who's leading Iran right now? Who are these people?
Well, they are not good human beings. They are fundamentalists. They do not embrace in any way what, the freedoms and liberties that we hold dear to us and that, we take almost as a given. That's what this is. I think things that many of us, myself included, take for granted, what my children take for granted, it's just absolutely not allowed there, both from a societal level. Cultural norms have been completely shattered and remolded to fit the narrative of, this Islamic Republic. And it's really frightening. It's hard to believe that 2024, the same year that we're living in the same times here in the United States, in Europe, and, walking the streets of Iran. I can speak for my uncle who actually 5 years ago went back. He went back to visit. I was shocked. I don't even know the details of how he was able to go back. But when he came back here, he said, the Iran I knew is no longer. And, to that extent, funny enough, my husband has always wanted to return because he has very solid and illustrative memories of when he was there, even as a 7, 8-year-old. But he says he just can't imagine returning to see something that is just a completely, a building that he grew up in is likely not there anymore. The streets just look vastly different. The women covered head to toe are not what he recalls. So it's just it's a sad state, one that last year with the whole, the whole, I guess we could call it, if we want to call it an uprising or, women life freedom. We had hope. We had hope. We thought we saw a glimmer of hope and change, but every step forward seems to be two steps back when we just see the corruption and the lack of any order or any democracy there.
It's interesting when we talk about Iran and people, I don't think that people who are young today really understand what Iran was around 50 years ago. And it was diverse. There was coexistence. There was tolerance. There was no radical Islamic leadership. And I think that what's really important about what you're saying is that it can happen anywhere. If you take your eye off the ball, if you take for granted what you have in your hands in terms of, quote unquote, freedom or living in a tolerant society, how quickly it can be taken away from you if you are that naive to think that there are not powers out there that would really like to take it away from you. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
1,000,000%. And that's, as I said a couple of minutes ago, it's exactly that taking things for granted, which is so easy to do, Eitan. It's so easy to take the fact that I could walk around in jean shorts and a tank top for granted because it's all I've ever known. Maybe what gives me that 1% of not taking it for granted is that I'm connected to my parents knowing otherwise. So I have that piece of, wow, what can be? But I still don't grasp it totally because I was born here in New York. So it's one thing hearing the stories constantly, but not having witnessed it myself, I'm still guilty of taking it for granted.
Sure.
But I do think that through those stories and through the hours that my parents and my in-laws, do tell us what Iran was and about the parties that they had and the Muslim friends that they had, the neighbors. They lived in buildings. One floor, was my mom's family, and the floor above was an amazing Muslim family that they were, coexisting and going to each other's parties. They had it all. They had it all, and things shattered. And I'm sure that it was, over the course of many years, and the brainchild of, many evil beings. Which I just think that there's so many parallels with each article I'm reading now, and hearing what's going on now, and uncovering that. Something that 30 years ago, right after the Oslo Accords, there were different organizations that were popping up, and then the Hamas Charter, all of these things, and then universities back then not having Palestine studies, let's say, and then over these years the infiltration, which there's nothing wrong with studying other religions and cultures, but not when it's a one-sided false narrative. So just seeing now what I have no qualms calling indoctrination that's happening on college campuses is terrifying because we know what's at stake. I know what's at stake. My parents know what's at stake. And actually, as I had spoken about on another podcast, I do believe that that's why many of the very loud female activists that we're hearing now in this space of Jewish civil rights and fighting this fight happen to be Iranian Jewish females. And I find that, both interesting, but also sort of obvious, because we all are mothers. We all have our kids that we look to, hoping that their future will be bright, but knowing what can happen and what, to a certain extent, we're witnessing unraveling right in front of our eyes. And it's terrifying.
So what do you do? Like, what do you do every day?
Okay, what don't I do? But what do I do? So now, by day, I'm director of programming and strategy at EndJewHatred. We are a Jewish civil rights movement. And the absolute mission of EndJewHatred is to make Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, socially unacceptable. So we do whatever is in our power to do that. And when I say, we're a Jewish civil rights movement, by virtue of being a minority civil rights movement, the goal is that everybody walks with us and fights this fight with us. Just as I and many, many Jews have walked alongside civil rights movements and minority rights movements of the past. All we're asking is that, everybody comes to our side as we fight this. And we do it on there's a multi-tiered approach. So we have the on-the-ground events, on-the-ground rallies when we need to apply social pressure for change. We also have college campus fellowship. So we have college campus fellows who they're tasked with, I think one very important thing to differentiate here as opposed to other Jewish organizations is that as a Jewish civil rights movement, we embrace the language of civil rights and the feeling of civil rights. What does that mean? It means that we're not tasking anybody, non-Jewish or Jewish, with being a complete scholar in the history of Israel and, what has happened over the past X amount of years. What we are tasking everybody with is for them to realize that it is not okay to beat somebody up or block somebody's path from walking into a classroom because you think that they are a horrific person because Zionists kill babies. Because Zionists don't kill babies. And regardless of if somebody wants to buy into that false narrative that Zionists kill babies, they cannot take that anger out on a Jewish individual because he's wearing a yarmulke. It's just not okay. That's a civil rights issue. So that's the ground that our framework is built upon. Brooke Goldstein, who's a phenomenal civil rights attorney, had come up with the whole concept of EndJewHatred. Now it's about 4 years ago. She founded it, did a deep dive study into civil rights movements, what works, what doesn't. Came up with the name EndJewHatred. It's in your face. It's, this is Jew hatred. We're going to call it out for what it is. But day in and day out, so I'm tasked with both the on the ground rallies and events. We have a very big piece of our movement now that is digital activism. So we've mobilized hundreds of volunteers. I mean, we operate through WhatsApp networks, which we have thousands of members. But the volunteers that we have, God bless them, and these are Jewish and non-Jewish volunteers. We have hundreds of volunteers that are doing work for us because we're grassroots, we're gritty, we work on a small budget. And what these volunteers are doing, they're researching different instances of Jew hatred to deplatform haters, to create systemic change in universities. If there's something going on with a professor in a classroom, we're constantly getting news fed from our activists. And then our volunteers are getting to work to do the research, come up with very well-crafted letters, not just slapstick, a few lines, well-crafted letters based on heavy-duty research that we then have volunteers flip into links, into an easy, tiny URL link to then blast out to we hit about 30,000 people now. With each link we send, for instance, send this letter to the trustees at Columbia University because of XYZ. Let's tell them to rethink it. So this is it's an interesting way of being an activist. It's legal, it's grassroots, but it is extremely annoying to the target. And annoyance can go a long way. So we've seen success. We've gotten calls, what can I do to make my, inbox stop getting flooded? And that's when we're able to sit down and say, well, we're going to tell you what you can do. Let's sit down and talk about it.
Well, let me interrupt you for just a second, because this is so important. This is an opportunity with a new audience for you to provide some information. And I want to do it right now.
I would love
where they can reach out to you and become helpful. So how do people get involved with what you're doing? Like, let's plug you right now and everyone get your pens out and do this.
Amazing. There's 2 ways and it's super easy. One, you can email me at Michelle, MICHELLE, at EndJewHatred, oneword.com. And if you tell me I would love to be part of your, what we call Action Items EndJewHatred group, I'll send you the WhatsApp link right away. That's one way. Also, if you follow us on Instagram, again, one word, EndJewHatred. The Instagram account, we both share, information about events, rallies. Eitan, we also collab with, great influencers like yourself that post important content. But you can also DM us at any time. And if you don't want to go the email route, just say, I'd love to be a part of your action items, because the action items is not on social media. That's not part of Instagram. That's a WhatsApp channel. And just so you all know, that's admin only. So I'm just pushing out every day the work that our volunteer writers and drafters are helping me get together. So any given day, there might be 10, 15 texts, sign this, do this, call this person. And then interspersed in there will also be, hey, there's a rally at whatever location, come show up. So that's admin only. There's no chatter. And then you can always, once you're in action items, text me directly if you would like to volunteer and, get in our groups that are free-flowing conversation to help with letter drafting or on-the-ground events. So there's just so much that we encourage and we implore everybody from every denomination and walk of life to get involved in.
Yeah, and I'd like to take it one step further because I cannot express enough how much I believe in your organization and what you guys are doing. There are many Jewish organizations out there, but we've been in touch and we've been collaborating and we have friends in common, colleagues in common, people who are fighting the good fight in common. And a lot of people ask me all the time because, of all the, the following on social media. So people reach out and so they should. And they say, well, what can we do? I've never done advocacy. I've never done activism. And, there are people that are professionals in this world and are moving the needle in the right direction. And you and one of your organizations, you and EndJewHatred, that's what you're doing. And I really applaud what you're doing and I really believe in you. And I feel that anyone who is listening that wants to make a difference, don't rely on other people to make the difference. You literally have the power, and it's connecting with Michelle, reaching out to her and just following their lead because it's one person at a time. I think it's so important for us to continue to say that if you want to make a difference, if you want to make a change, then it really does start with you. And I don't think that some people really understand that, but it's that easy. It doesn't require, changing your life. It requires getting involved and letting other people who know what it is that works lead the way. And your organization is one such leader, and so are you. And I see you out there. I mean, maybe I don't want to interrupt the flow of what you're saying in terms of actual information. So if you want to continue, please continue.
But so in terms of actual information, I mean, you just really expressed it even better than I ever could. My tagline, essentially, two things. One, it's go time. And two, everybody is an activist. Everybody is an activist in any way you are able to be or choose to be. And which is why we have the on-the-ground activism. We have the digital activism. We also believe in information activism by being fed information, like Eitan, the information you beautifully put out on social media. And when you express, your monologues that are, so priceless and invaluable, and we repost those because right there, that is sort of, just fanning the flame of activism in somebody that might not have been there prior. So everybody can be an activist. I know that it sounds so simplistic, but it's really the truth. And you can decide how deeply you want to be involved. And I don't use the word shallow because it's not really shallowly. No matter what you do, you are helping us move the needle. So that's that. Now, in terms of myself being out there a lot, yeah, look, it's nonstop. I choose to be both behind the scenes, doing this digital activism piece, talking to, I don't know if you know this, Eitan, but I know I've said this out loud, but my last name, Ahdoot, translates into unity in Hebrew. Pretty cool. Yeah. And that's sort of been, something that I build off of a lot because I do believe that we have to unite across organizations to really reach our end goal. Even though we all have different core competencies, and even though there are times when we feel that we're doing this so grassroots and every day we're pouring sweat, and sometimes people are questioning, where are the legacy orgs? What are they doing? I'm hoping, and I have to put, my faith into the fact that they are doing what they do best. Some might focus more on research. Some might focus more on, statistics or teaching and educational programs. But what we're doing now, this activism is now, it's necessary, and this is our wheelhouse. And with that, I am on the ground a lot. I'm on the ground right when we see, an injustice occur. we want to attack it. And we rally the troops both to come out. We rally the troops that are our loudest voices, to speak. We get press on things. And this is how slowly but surely we're getting heard. We've seen it just a couple of months ago. We went outside the district attorney in New York's office because he is just not at all punishing Jew haters and frankly crime in general, but Jew haters the way that he should. We got loud. We went out there. We had a stellar lineup of speakers that were compelling and spoke from the heart. We made it to the front cover of a local paper here. And from that, not Bragg himself, the DA, did not get in touch with us, but you know what? Mayor Adams did, and that's something. So that's really just step by step. We know, the term Rome wasn't built in a day. No, nothing's going to happen magically overnight. But with these steps towards embracing our civil rights and enforcing our civil rights, we have to be loud and out there. We have to be heard. And we have to show the world at large that we're not going to be quiet.
Where does this come from, Michelle? I mean, like with you personally, I think that it's, to me, very interesting where this fire comes from. Now, you talked about your family in Iran, but let's go down to more you, personal. Like, you have to have a certain personality for what you're doing. And you really do stand out because we see you. And there's a reason why I'm talking to you. Where does this come from in you? Like, do you remember, were you always like that? Were you always kind of loud and proud and in your face and just like...
I've always been, not even so much in the Jewish space, but...
Yeah, I'm not talking about the Jewish space.
Yeah, so it's funny, not in the Jewish space, but I've always been unwavering in, I don't want to say, I guess I could say unwavering in who I am, my sense of self, and my confidence that when I think something is right, and when I make sure that I have the knowledge. I'm someone that admits when I don't have knowledge about something, but I know when I do. So when I have, true knowledge about something and I know that I'm doing the right thing, my moral compass is there. And that's when I have the courage to just blaze ahead and do it. And I think I've always been like that.
Yeah, where does that come from? Like that, what you said, it's just funny because you just said two words. You said moral clarity. And my dad is 95 today. And I went out with him for breakfast. Yeah. And in the birthday card that I wrote for him, I thanked him for providing me with moral clarity. I said a few things. And of all the things, after he finished the card, he was very moved. And he looked at me and he said, moral clarity? Like as if from me? Wow. And I'm like, yeah, from you. Because, so I know that I think it's, culture has shaped me and many things have shaped me. But my dad, in his own way, has always taught me about fairness and how important that is. And so I can trace it to my father, I think, as a source. But I'm interested in where, because you said the same words, moral clarity. Right. Like, where does that come from with you?
So I'll tell you, it's 1,000,000% my family. We are extremely close. We are extremely, I was raised with huge value on ethics, a huge value on sense of self. And I do believe as the youngest of 4 kids, I think that I also am, I don't know if I want to say birth order always, matters or doesn't matter, but in my situation, interestingly enough, I do think that I was given more free rein to be me because, as Iranians, we are traditional people. My sister was the firstborn, 2 brothers, and then myself. My sister and I talk very freely about this, that she was the oldest and she was married when she was 18. Subsequently got, divorced after a bunch of years. And thank God she has 3 amazing kids to show for it. But with that vast difference, myself, by the time I came along, I'm 9 years younger than her. So sort of my parents, even though the tradition was still there, they were broken in a little bit. They were broken in. They, now had lived in America longer. So, I guess for them, the big step was, okay, I was going to college at Stern at NYU, and that they were actually allowing me to live there, as opposed to, 9 years ago, that never would have happened for a female in our family. So that's just an interesting piece that I think maybe that also gave me that extra, fire. And I was always a little bit of a rebel just within our world, which is not rebellious to the world at large, I don't think. But the moral values, 1,000,000% it's from my parents. It predates my parents. It's my grandparents. We just are firm believers in always looking at both sides of a situation objectively. Religion does play a big factor. We're not Orthodox, but we are conservative, Jewish individuals. So with that tradition, every Friday night, we are home for Shabbat. No questions asked. Again, not that we don't use electricity. It's the tradition of having family Shabbat dinner every Friday night. There's at a bare minimum 30 of us in our dining room.
How
grabbing
many?
30 at least. Because
30 people every Friday night for dinner?
Every Friday night.
Because I was about to say, we have Friday night dinners every Friday, pretty much, but not 30 people. Wow. That's amazing.
No, Eitan, without fail. I think I'm without fail because see the way that our life works is I'm one of four, as I said. Between us, we have combined 15 kids. We all live within 10 minutes of each other. My parents are here as well. And then my husband is one of three boys. They have between them combined 11 kids, also within 10 minutes of each other. And our parents are all here with us still. So you do the math, and that's how we get this number.
It sounds noisy and
yes,
and wonderful.
And that's beautiful, though. It's wonderful, but I really think, Eitan, that the depth of that is that with this tradition comes values that are unbreakable, and values of doing good, the values of tikkun olam, of making sure that we can give back to this world, values of being good, doing good and being good. So anyway, I know I'm going a little bit on a tangent, but I think all of that has made me, coupled with the fact that I've always just had, a fire in me because I want to always fight for what's right. When I do feel strongly about something, I go full force ahead.
Well, you feel it.
Yeah.
You really do with you. There's this sense of, you said the word fight. And when I think of you, that's what I see. There are some people who I think that's kind of like what they're about, and it's not just fight, it's fight for good, fight to protect, fight to preserve, fight for a better world. You can't just let it all slip away because you personally have been there. You've lived that with your family. How are your kids taking all of this?
Oh, so interesting you're asking. So I have 4 kids. My eldest is going to be 21 in 2 days. And then I have a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and almost 14-year-old. I think their admiration of what I do and their knowledge now of how important it is to do what we do overtakes any of the mom, what about me? Mom, pay attention to me. Mom, stop looking on your phone. I think they just realize that we're working on something bigger here. I will say, though, that my 2 older daughters are better versions of myself in terms of being loud and fighting the fight. So they're on college campus. Thankfully, the campus they're on actually is relatively a good one. But I'd like to think that the reason why it's relatively calm is because they ensure that it stays that way. They're super involved. They are, locked into dealing with the administration and all of the different clubs and organizations on campus, building bridges across Jewish orgs and non-Jewish orgs. So I think when you ask how the kids are dealing with it, the kids are also teaching me. But my youngest, it's not always easy for her when, she needs homework help and I'm in the middle of getting an action item out, or, she needs me to pick her up from her tennis practice and I'm late because I'm just, caught up doing something that she knows is more important, but it's tough as a 13-year-old.
Sure.
And almost 14-year-old. So they're doing, it's at the point now that it's almost become a joke that my little one will sometimes say, "Oh no, Mom, I get it. You're ending Jew hatred." And that's become a tagline joke in the family that if Mom's too busy, she's ending Jew hatred.
Yeah. You know what? I get the same thing in my house. It's like, Dad is trying to help save the Jewish people. And it's it's not, it's, like maybe at the macro, but really on the micro, it's really, we're literally doing it for our kids. There's something that you said was interesting, which was that you're learning from your kids. And I'll tell you a little story. I don't know when this podcast is going to come out, probably in a few weeks. And by that time, maybe I'll have shared a film that I've made. So I made a short piece of around 10 minutes long of students on campus in the States who were visiting Israel, and I interviewed them. And I'll be putting that piece out there soon. And after we finished interviewing, I had to get on camera, completely unscripted. Like, I'm not in the piece. It's not about me. It's about them. But I went on camera to just, and I remember having goosebumps as I spoke this, which is how confident I am and how hopeful I am because of these students, because of how inspiring they were to me, because of what leaders they're going to be. And I grew up in London, and I went to a high school, and it was Jewish, and we had a Jewish uniform, with on the lapel, the Torah, and we had a kippah, and we'd get attacked a lot outside of school, and we'd have to have security to walk us to and from the tube station. But the kids today, what they're seeing out there in the open is pretty fucking scary. And I was so moved by how adamant these kids were in fight on, let's go. And we're learning so much because the last 20, 30 years, I mean, I don't know about you, and this is something that I want to talk about because I talk a lot about failed Jewish leadership. But I think that there's also, in the Jewish context, failed parenting. Like, I don't think that we as a community, and I'm not throwing judgment. I'm not criticizing. I'm just, for me, I think I'm stating fact that not all of us or enough of us have made it a priority to instill our kids with what it is to be Jewish. Why is that important? What does that mean? And I'm not talking about Orthodox or conservative or secular or atheist. You can be very Jewish and be any of those things.
Yes, absolutely.
But we haven't done enough to instill our kids with this. Like, it takes something like this. Do you know what I mean? It takes something like October 7th to make us kind of like wake up.
That's it. So it's funny you say that, because on the podcast that I did with Shai Davidai.
Who's that? Who's Shai Davidai? I don't know anyone called Shai Davidai. Oh, sounds like a chump. I'm kidding. So, you know how much I love him. Yeah,
he is incredible.
Yes.
And I specifically use the words, people woke up after 10/7. It's interesting. And I didn't mean it as a dig. I didn't mean it as, I didn't mean it to push people down. But again, I guess it goes along that same concept of, which again, I said that I'm guilty of also taking things for granted. So in this space, I was always awake. But I think in this space, a lot of people weren't, because everyone was living the good life. I always give this example, which I don't know if you've heard, but I've given this to other people when I speak about EndJewHatred, but it's just a very telling sort of, picture of what we're discussing. As I told you, we've been around for now, I've been here for 3 years or so. And last year, pre-10/7, we were rallying outside of CUNY, the offices of CUNY, City University of New York. For anyone that doesn't know, CUNY has a bunch of different campuses in New York. And CUNY had a Jew hater named Nurdin Kiswani at CUNY Law for 4 years, from, I believe it was more or less 2018 to 22, more or less. We were following Nurdin Kiswani closely. We knew that she had threatened to light somebody's FIDF hoodie on fire, Friends of the IDF Forces hoodie on fire, and enough disciplinary measures were not taken against her. So here she is, a law student who is a threat to Jewish civil rights, and she was given a platform at CUNY Law's commencement ceremony to speak there. Not only was she not suspended or expelled, she was given a platform. That, combined with knowing from some CUNY professors, indoctrination, whatnot going on in class, compounded by the year after she gave the speech. Fatima Mohammed, another student who spews horrific blood libel, was given a platform to speak at CUNY Law's commencement. We said enough is enough, and we rallied. So we arranged a rally outside the chancellor's office. And Eitan, if I tell you how hard it was to get about 50 people out, 50 people, which is nothing for something as horrific as this. But why? Because people, look, I won't say they were asleep, but it didn't affect them. It didn't, I got, oh, CUNY, what's CUNY? My kids go to UPenn. Or, CUNY, what's CUNY? That's never going to affect me. So people didn't either want to admit or listen to me when we tried explaining that this Jew hatred is bubbling on the surface of campuses nationwide, that it's there, it's going to reach a boiling point. So whether they were asleep or complacent or taking things for granted that it's not going to directly affect them, whatever the reason might be, that same rally now will get 500 people out. We'll get masses, doing digital activism, click and sign campaigns by the thousands. So that's, as much as I don't love using the term silver lining, I mean, that is one great thing that came out of a horrific time.
I think I want to push back a little and say that it's a sliver of a silver lining, because you need not 500 people, you need 5,000 and you need 50,000.
Very happy you're saying.
Well, I want to say a couple of things, which is, yeah. I'm not a Netanyahu fan. I'm not a hater, meaning that I wasn't, I'm not one of these, I think that he did a lot of good for the country back in the day. And I've been fed up with him like a lot of people have for many years. But when in Israel we got fed up, or enough people got fed up, we took to the streets. And yes. This is not the point of me saying this for anyone who supports Bibi. Is my point is not don't support Bibi and I'm hating my Bibi. My point is, it was important enough for me to try and make a change to go to the streets. And I didn't go to the streets once a week. I joined hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of people every Saturday night to go to the streets. And I'm not an activist. This is not what I have a branding agency. I'm very happily married with 2 small kids. It's a very modest business. And people see me as some influencer, some advocate. I'm not. I'm just a regular guy. But there comes a time where things are important enough to you for you to protect what it is that you have, that you need to get out there and you need to make some noise. And what I really love about what you do, Michelle, and what you do at EndJewHatred is you have to get out there and you have to do something. And it is a silver lining. But what angers me, and I'm not judging, what angers me is how come in the land of plenty, why am I not seeing big demonstrations of Jewish organizations or Jewish people and their allies, like the one that you had many, 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 many months ago with 300,000 people? I don't remember the last one. And I want people to understand how important it is that you listening right now at home, you have a power and you have I would even say a responsibility to yourself, if you have good values, to fight for those values by making a physical difference and signing the petitions, writing to the people, and going from 50 to 500 to 5,000 to 50,000 to 500,000 people to protect your culture. And it doesn't happen in America. That's the thing that kills me. I don't see it happening in America, and why? Why are Jewish people not flocking to the streets?
If you could answer that question, you would pretty much you'd be hitting the lottery. But what my gut is I think because we spend a lot of time trying to figure this out. I see that through the digital activism piece, we have the thousands, right? We have the 30,000 we're hitting. On the ground, we have that 500. There have been a few thousand, but we're not hitting 5,000. We're just not. So when I take a step back and really think about it, I think it's either out of fear, which I can't blame people for being fearful. I can't, Eitan. It's not, people
Sure.
tell me,
Sure.
that there many times the first question when I send something out about a rally is there going to be extra security there, on top of police presence? So I think fear could paralyze. And then I also think that, and I hope this is wrong, actually. So I hope I'm thinking it, but I shouldn't really be thinking it, but I'm thinking it, is that some of us might think that others will come out strong on the ground. So why should I? I have a job. I am busy during the day. It's hard for me to leave. And other people will, pick up and be my voice, the on the ground voice.
So
But
let's stop there, and we have an opportunity to say something to those people right now. What would we say to them?
I think what I would tell everybody is, again, using my "it's go time" motto, we have to come out strong. Look at what the pro-Hamas movement is doing. People can joke about, oh, they don't have jobs. People can joke about they have nothing better to do with their time. That's all fine and well, but right now this has to be a priority. If we are doing an on-the-ground rally, action, event, it's for a reason. And the bigger the numbers are, the more we'll get heard. It's, again, input, output. If we see 10,000 people walking across the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City, you know damn well that will be on the front cover of many New York papers. And that will make it onto, not just the friendly news networks, but other news networks as well. So we're at the point now that we don't have the luxury to, only do certain itty bitty pieces and not, complete the whole puzzle. But you don't have to be that missing puzzle piece every time. But every now and then, I urge you to also come out strongly.
I'll be less diplomatic. Get off your ass and go to one of these demonstrations, because what you're actually doing when you do that, and I'm not laughing, I'm literally like, get up off of your ass. What you were saying before about Iran, I think people take for granted, we were talking about what people take for granted, and you take for granted your freedom.
Yep.
And you take for granted the Starbucks that you have on the corner.
Exactly.
You're so, I think in America specifically, blinded by consumerism, because everything is so convenient, that October 7th has to be a wake-up call to Jewish people everywhere, not because of what happened only on October 7th, which is horrific. It's because of the accompanying silence,
yes,
by the rest of the world to denounce unequivocally what happened. And that silence is coming from where you live. And if that silence coming from where you live is happening day in, day out, then speaking up is the most important thing that you can do right now. Like, you don't need to have a job like Michelle's. You don't need to be someone like, let's say, me, who's, dedicating myself to this fight. I do have other things to do. I have a business to run, I have my family, but I'm dedicating myself. You don't have to go all in like I am.
Right.
But for fuck's sake, get out there, go to a demonstration, sign a petition, and drag a friend. Because you said, what did you say? 10,000 people on the bridge. Let me break it down for people, because I think maybe this will be a little bit more palatable. 10,000 people is a big number, but let's break it down to the individual. It's someone who went and took her husband. That's 2 people. Or a family that went. That's 5 people. Or a guy that went and brought his neighbor who is not Jewish, who is an ally, who said, this is important to me. So all of those people, that's probably around 15 to 20 people. Now you multiply that. That's that you can do that. You can literally do that. And the stakes are so high. The stakes are so high because this isn't something that you're reading about what's going on in our neck of the woods here in Israel. This is something that is happening to where your kids are going to school.
Happening right here. It's happening right here. It's a threat to our future. It's a threat to our democracy. Eitan, another anecdote I'll give, it was about 3 years ago. I was with about, I think it was 15 to 20 women around my age. And we were having a talk with a CEO of a well-known Jewish advocacy organization. And as we were talking, he looked up at all of us and he said, "How many of you were born here?" And I think all except one person raised our hand. Then he said, "How many of your parents were born here?" Only one person raised her hand. And he looked at us and he said, "Don't ever get too comfortable because you never know what tomorrow can bring." And that sticks with me because right there is that taking things for granted. And if we don't do, God only knows what can happen. So I just think, your takeaway, you're saying it much more beautifully and bluntly than I am, but it is important to come out, extremely important. It's important to be an activist in every way, but I still do embrace any way that any of you listening will get involved.
Yeah.
And I do hope that down the line, it will be, you all walking with us at a huge rally and a huge event. But for now, I'll even take you click and you sign and you send 15 letters a day. Give me 15 minutes a day and you're going to help us make change.
Yeah. So anyone who's listening, Jewish or not, please, please, please do this. It's so important. I'd like to actually ask for your thoughts on who you think is doing a good job out there in the digital space, people who you think are inspiring, that people should maybe follow and listen to, and maybe not the people that we might both know that are kind of like at this stage household names within the Jewish advocacy space. But is there anyone in particular that, and doesn't need to be Jewish, of course, just that you really look up to and thinks the same? Yeah.
Well, other than Eitan.
No, you're not allowed to say me. No, not me.
You truly are. No, I'm sorry. Anybody listening, I'm sorry. Eitan is incredible. I look forward when I see those videos of you just looking at the camera raw and talking. I know that I'm going to lock in and put my other thoughts aside and listen to what you have to say because it's very valuable. And I repost that for everybody to hear almost every single time. So that's fine. I'll leave that on the side.
Thank you.
Otherwise, look, it's a little bit difficult for me, Eitan, because right now my entire feed and world is this space for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my greatest inspirations is Barry Weiss. If anybody does not listen to her podcasts, honestly,
agree.
For me, everything. That's another thing. Weekly, I put time aside, time I don't have to listen to.
There are two women I wanted to meet. They're on my bucket list. One was Barry Weiss, and I met her, and we were in touch here and there. More there than here, unfortunately. But I met her, and she's amazing. And the other one's Gillian Anderson. But there you go. But Barry Weiss is just like.
That was a good one. Yeah. So Barry Weiss, funny enough, was she spoke at Duke University at my daughter's school when Alex was a freshman, and Alex was invited to sit at a table with her. So they got to know each other. We were all fangirling over her. My husband, who doesn't he's that husband. He's just that heart of gold husband that, worships, loves, encourages me, etc., etc. Our running joke is that he's just in love with Barry Weiss. So he actually, Eitan, he doesn't even have social media, my husband. He doesn't have social media. He barely knows how to use email. He's a doctor. He doctors. He's a physician. But every Saturday morning, I got him on Spotify just to listen to Barry Weiss. And as she starts and says, "This is Barry Weiss," I hear him scream, "I love you, Barry Weiss." Nice. And we are. So anyway.
Well deserved, because she is amazing. Lucky for you guys, you're married. And Barry's married, and Barry's also married to a woman.
And
so
I actually told
her
that. Exactly. And when I bumped into her actually on our way to Israel in January, we were in the airport together, and I was telling her that story, and we got a good laugh out of it.
She's great.
But so Barry Weiss is top of my head. Hillel Neuer, whoever, again, you could say he's in our space, but he's just extremely intelligent and fighting that fight at UN Watch. He's incredible.
He is incredible. And by the way, if anyone wants to listen to, you can go to the I'm That, podcast, and I interviewed him as well. And he's in the roster. So he's amazing.
He's something. So those are the two really off my head besides you that come. And of course, again, even though he's in our space, I'm going to just give a plug to the one and only Shai Davidai because he's a
You don't
rock
have
star.
to do that. I mean, because I was going to use this whole thing, be like, she said Hillel, she said, she said Barry White, she said me, and she didn't even mention you, but now you mentioned him. So.
I had to say it. I had to because I have a thing for good humans that make a difference, and the two of you, you're good human beings, good souls, and I just admire that beyond.
He's well, thank you. He really is. He really is inspirational and boots on the ground. It's not. Yep. It's not just digital advocacy. This guy is really putting his life on the line, when he is his career. So, and doing such important work.
Actually, as a side note, Eitan, so next Tuesday, we already, I'm setting up a rally outside the Columbia gates because we're going to be talking about unmasking hate on campus, trying to push forward an unmasking policy. And Shai gets back from his travels the day before, but he told me, of course, I'll be there.
Of course he'll be there. That's Shai. He's in it. And he doesn't give a shit. He's unapologetic.
Exactly.
And I really think that, people should follow him, and not just Jewish people, because he is, listen, what ultimately I think that we are trying to do, a lot of the people that you mentioned and so many more, essentially what we're doing is we're fighting for, maybe this will sound cheesy, but I really do think that we're fighting for humanity. I mean, this is not just the Jewish story. This is the story of all people who believe in good, decent values and who can put aside and know when they're being lied to about, well, what about the genocide? But what about the apartheid? But what about the slaves and the colonialism, that are smart enough to see through that bullshit and realize that actually those are the people who are kind of eroding the good values of humanity. And I think a lot of the people that you mentioned and a lot of the people that we follow, like people like Douglas Murray, you're basically fighting for Western values and civilization, and you're not fighting against Palestinians and you're not fighting against Muslims. What you're doing is you're fighting against those Palestinians and those Muslims or those radical Muslims who are literally lying. Lying about us. Not all of them, of course not. But the ones that do are doing that. And
they're threatening our tomorrow. They're threatening, as we said, they're a threat to democracy. They're a threat to Western values. And when I say they, just as you said, this is not a quote unquote pro-Palestine situation. These are pro-Hamas thugs, pro-terror thugs who are scarily and dangerously fomenting false narratives that are horrifically encouraging Jew haters to be emboldened to hate more. And it's frightening. And that's what we're fighting. We're really fighting for democratic values. And this is why I constantly say, EndJewHatred, a Jewish civil rights movement. It's a minority civil rights movement. But what that means is that we are embracing rights. We're embracing rights that everybody, and I firmly believe, and I've seen, and my daughters tell me as well, on college campuses, the vast majority of students, even if they don't know what is going on in Israel right now, they don't want their graduation to be hijacked by these pro-terror thugs. They don't want their finals to now be on Zoom instead of in person because the security threat that these thugs have, brought to the entire campus. Who wants that? They want to just go along with what they know. They want to embrace American values, democratic values, and live their lives. And that's why I think the allyship that we are forging, particularly on campuses, is something special, because we're seeing that these individuals that, that want to, yes, help the Jewish people, but also help themselves and their civil rights not being violated, because it really is a Western civilization situation that we're seeing unfold before our eyes.
Yeah. And remember, you listening, you can do something about that. It's not insurmountable. It's just, you just got to make the decision to do it. Michal, I could talk to you for hours and I know that we'll continue talking, but I just want to thank you on behalf of so many people for the work that you're doing at EndJewHatred and for the work that you are personally doing. And also, I'm very grateful to you because you're one of those people who has allowed me to get my voice out there, and you've been very supportive and generous with your platform and with many others who are trying to fight the good fight. So you're an example to a lot of people, Jewish and non-Jewish. I encourage you to go to EndJewHatred, find out more about the organization. And let's just repeat it one more time, Michelle, if you can give them your direct contact information if they want to get involved, which I hope by the end of this conversation, there'll be a good amount of people that will reach out to you.
Yeah, I truly hope so. I hope to meet a lot of you. One is email, MICHELLE at EndJewHatred, EndJewHatred.com. Super easy. You can email me or EndJewHatred, one word, Instagram. Follow us because we definitely do post and collab a lot of great content, and because you could then easily DM and it'll come to me to join the WhatsApp groups.
Brilliant.
So get involved, and anybody that is involved are glad that they are. We get thank yous when it's us that should be thanking people, but we get thank yous because people are realizing that they're activists. We've sort of ignited the flame of activism in them, and they don't feel helpless anymore. So, with that feeling of not being helpless, you feel like you are helping, and you are helping. So I encourage all of you to help us fight this fight. Please get in touch with me and get involved and join the movement.
God, that was such a good ending, but I'm going to butcher it now with something else that I want to say because I just thought of something. I'm the king of bad podcast hosts. What you just said is basically a great segue for community, because what you're actually doing at EndJewHatred is you're building a community of activists. So for all those people that constantly reach out and asking me, what can I do? It's coming from a place of you feeling hopeless and helpless, because there you are, you're in the middle of wherever it is that you live, and you're isolated. Yeah. You don't know what you can do. Well, there's a community of people that are right there, an email away, and you can be a part of that community, making a difference. You'll be doing good. You'll be making the world a better place, and you'll be improving your own life and the lives of your families, and you'll feel less lonely, because a lot of what we're going through as a community is isolation and feeling like we're outcasts, and you got to lean in to your communities. And EndJewHatred is one of those communities that's not only a community of doers, but you're fighters as well. And there's so much to be gained from being a part of that in the best of ways. So now I will shut up.
No.
And I will say
thanks, Eitan. Thank you so much, Eitan.
Thank you for being on.
Take care.
Well, that's it. Thank you for joining me on I'm That. I hope you enjoyed the chat, and I hope you'll join me for our next guest. In the meantime, definitely hit subscribe, whether you're on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, or any other platform. And if you can, leave a comment, give it a like, and tell your friends. That would be brilliant. Stay tuned for the next show, and see you soon.